If you want to predict whether someone will develop colon cancer, the second deadliest cancer in the world, the best place to start isn't their genetics or their family history, it's what's currently living inside their intestines. Most people have no idea this matters, but the truth is, colon cancer doesn't appear out of nowhere. Long before a tumor ever forms, a specific war is already raging inside your gut, and when the wrong bacteria win, the consequences can be catastrophic. Imagine if a single spice, something likely sitting in your kitchen right now, could enter that battlefield, wipe out the harmful bacteria fueling tumor growth, and cut off cancer cells' food supply before they even become a threat. That's exactly what happens, and the science behind it is far more compelling than anything your routine checkup will reveal. Think of your large intestine as a crowded subway system, teeming with trillions of microorganisms. Most of them are law-abiding commuters. They mind their business, support digestion, and help keep the system running smoothly. But troublemakers are boarding at every stop, and they're not just passive passengers. Harmful bacteria such as Fusobacterium nucleatum, Bacteroides fragilis, and opportunistic E. coli strains actively secrete toxins into the intestinal lining. This triggers a continuous, low-grade inflammation that never fully shuts down. The research is clear. Chronic intestinal inflammation is directly linked to the initiation and acceleration of colorectal cancer. It gets worse. These same bacteria manipulate the surrounding environment to shield early cancer cells, essentially bribing the immune system into silence. They create a protective bubble where tumors can start forming undisturbed. But here's the silver lining. Your gut isn't a fixed battlefield. Its microbial balance shifts depending on what you eat, sometimes within just 24 to 48 hours, and one specific spice can tilt that balance dramatically in your favor. I'm Dr. Lyanna. I've spent nearly a decade in emergency medicine and cancer research, and I want to be honest with you. For years, I counseled patients using conventional advice. Schedule your colonoscopies, watch red meat intake, know your family history. That guidance isn't wrong, but it's incomplete. Over the past decade, research on the gut microbiome and cancer prevention has advanced rapidly, reshaping how I approach colon cancer risk. I kept asking the same question. Why do some people with no family history or apparent risk factors develop colorectal cancer at 52? The answer is far more nuanced than I realized when I started, and it comes down in large part to the bacteria we either feed or starve with every meal. In this video, I'll cover 5 key points. First, which bacterial species are most directly implicated in colorectal cancer, and what historical signs might hint your microbiome is already skewed. Second, how a specific compound in a common spice can eliminate harmful bacteria selectively, leaving beneficial bacteria untouched. Third, a separate pathway where this same compound disrupts cancer cell survival by starving tumors of their ability to form blood vessels. Fourth, why most people see almost no benefit from this spice, and the single adjustment in preparation that changes everything. Fifth, a detailed meal-by-meal protocol you can start today to deliver this compound at research-backed doses. Before diving into the science, a quick note. If you haven't already subscribed, please do. It takes 2 seconds, it's free, and it allows this channel to continue sharing research-backed health insights. The compound I'm talking about is curcumin, found in turmeric. I know what happened when you heard that. Your brain immediately dismissed it. Turmeric has been in wellness articles for over a decade, so it can feel ordinary. But here's what most articles don't tell you. Curcumin is one of the most rigorously studied natural compounds in modern pharmacology, with over 15,000 peer-reviewed studies. The research on its role in the gut and colorectal cancer is striking. The problem isn't the science, it's how people use it. A pinch in a smoothie or a capsule off the shelf delivers almost none of the curcumin to the places it actually needs to work. Fixing that changes everything. Curcumin operates like a dual-action biological weapon, but only if used correctly. Your gut contains roughly 100 trillion microorganisms, and most antibiotics are blunt instruments, wiping out both good and bad bacteria indiscriminately. Curcumin works differently. Think of it as a trained security officer who identifies the troublemakers and targets them specifically. It disrupts their cell membranes, prevents protective biofilm formation, and suppresses bacterial communication. Fusobacterium nucleatum, one of the bacteria most consistently found in colorectal tumor tissue, is particularly vulnerable. Curcumin interferes with its adhesion to the intestinal wall, preventing colonization. At the same time, curcumin feeds the beneficial bacteria, increasing lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, strains linked to healthy immune function and reduced inflammation. It's not just eliminating threats, it's reinforcing defenses. Pharmaceutical researchers have spent billions trying to replicate this selective action, and it's right in your spice rack. But the action doesn't stop at the bacterial level. Curcumin also targets cancer cells themselves. To understand this, you need to know how tumors survive. A tumor can't grow beyond the size of a pinhead without creating its own blood vessels. It secretes VEG, a protein signaling nearby tissue to grow new vessels, giving the tumor an unlimited food supply. Curcumin blocks this signal, starving tumors before they can expand. Additionally, it activates apoptosis, the programmed cell death mechanism that cancer cells usually disable. Laboratory studies show curcumin induces apoptosis in cancer cells while leaving healthy cells untouched. Clinical trials back this up. At the University of Illinois, adults at elevated colorectal cancer risk took 4 grams of curcumin daily for 30 days. Biopsies showed a significant reduction in precancerous formations. At Johns Hopkins, patients with familial adenomatous polyposis, genetically prone to developing dozens of polyps, took curcumin with a bioavailability enhancer. After 6 months, polyp count dropped by about 60% and polyp size by 50%, a result that usually requires surgical intervention. Microbiome analyses and lab studies consistently demonstrate the same effect. Curcumin reduces harmful bacteria, boosts beneficial strains, and disrupts cancer cell defenses. The science is clear. The challenge is delivering curcumin effectively into the body. Despite all this compelling research, most people using turmeric see almost no measurable benefit, and it has nothing to do with the science being wrong. The culprit is curcumin's poor absorption. In its natural form, curcumin is extremely poorly absorbed by the human digestive system. When you consume turmeric powder, even generously, most of it passes through the small intestine and into the colon without entering your bloodstream in meaningful amounts. Pharmacokinetic studies estimate standard curcumin bioavailability at less than 1%. Think about that. If clinical trials use 1 to 4 grams of curcumin daily and you're absorbing less than 1% of a pinch in a smoothie, your golden milk is delivering only 1 or 2 milligrams of active compound, far from a therapeutic dose. There are 2 inexpensive, accessible ways to solve this. The first is black pepper. Its active compound, piperine, inhibits an intestinal enzyme called CYP3A4, which normally breaks down curcumin before it can be absorbed. When piperine is present, curcumin crosses the intestinal barrier intact. Studies consistently show that combining black pepper with curcumin increases absorption by roughly 2,000%. That's not a typo, 2,000% from a simple pinch of pepper. The second key factor is dietary fat. Curcumin is fat-soluble, meaning it binds to lipid molecules and enters the lymphatic system via a pathway that bypasses primary breakdown in the gut. Olive oil, coconut oil, avocado, or even the natural fat in eggs or fish accomplish this. Fat plus black pepper plus curcumin equals a potent, bioavailable intervention rather than a symbolic gesture. Practically speaking, your goal is 1 to 1.5 teaspoons of quality turmeric powder spread across the day, always paired with freshly cracked black pepper and a fat source. Here's a simple, actionable approach that fits into an ordinary day. Start with morning golden milk, ideally between 7 and 9 a.m. Warm 1 cup of unsweetened oat milk or almond milk to just below a simmer. Whisk in 1 teaspoon of turmeric, a firm pinch of freshly cracked black pepper, and half a teaspoon of coconut or olive oil. Ginger and cinnamon are optional for flavor. Avoid cow's milk, as the protein binds curcumin and inhibits absorption. This single morning drink, prepared correctly, delivers 200 to 400 milligrams of bioavailable curcumin, enough to start shifting your gut environment. For breakfast, add half a teaspoon of turmeric and a pinch of black pepper directly into scrambled eggs or your cooking oil. If you prefer oatmeal, stir turmeric into the oats as they cook and add a tablespoon of almond butter for fat. These adjustments don't require overhauling your diet, they simply maximize curcumin absorption while providing enjoyable flavors. At lunch, turmeric integrates easily into soups, grain bowls, and dressings. Stir a teaspoon into lentil or vegetable soup, drizzle olive oil over a grain bowl, or create a simple salad dressing combining olive oil, apple cider vinegar, half a teaspoon of turmeric, and a pinch of black pepper. 10 seconds is all it takes, and the dose continues working on your gut bacteria and cells. For dinner, roast vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, sweet potatoes, carrots, or chickpeas with olive oil, turmeric, black pepper, and a pinch of sea salt. Roasting at standard oven temperatures does not significantly degrade curcumin. Protein sources like fish, chicken, or lentils can also be coated in turmeric and pepper before cooking in olive oil or avocado oil. This method simultaneously enhances flavor and delivers the therapeutic compound directly to your gut. An optional evening dose, such as a small golden milk, extends curcumin presence throughout the night. The lower intestinal tract is most metabolically active during sleep regarding microbial activity, so having curcumin available during this period helps optimize its effects on your gut bacteria. A few details are critical. First, black pepper is non-negotiable. Without piperine, blood levels remain far too low for a measurable effect. Freshly cracked black pepper is slightly superior to pre-ground varieties, offering higher piperine content. Second, fat quantity is less important than its presence. Even a teaspoon of olive oil or the fat in eggs or fish is sufficient to engage the lipid-based absorption pathway. Curcumin tolerates standard cooking temperatures well, whether sautéed at medium heat or roasted between 350 and 425 degrees F. Deep frying or extreme heat can degrade it, but this is rarely how turmeric is prepared. Third, sourcing matters. Not all turmeric powders are equal. Curcumin content in low-grade powder can be as little as 1 to 2% of the weight. High-quality, organic turmeric typically contains 3 to 5% standardized curcumin. To reach the clinical doses used in research 2 to 4 grams daily, consider phyto or nanocurcumin supplements, which solve bioavailability issues through encapsulation rather than relying on black pepper. Consistency is also vital. Your gut responds to patterns, not sporadic events. Daily doses, even as small as half a teaspoon paired with pepper and fat, produce measurable microbial shifts over 30 days. Occasional large doses are far less effective. Microbial populations adapt to repetition, reinforcing the balance in your favor. For some groups, this conversation is particularly urgent. If you've taken multiple courses of antibiotics in recent years, your gut microbiome may have been disrupted, reducing protective bacteria and leaving opportunistic harmful strains room to colonize. Curcumin's prebiotic effect on Lactobacillus and Bifidobacterium is crucial here. Individuals with a family history of colorectal cancer or a history of polyp removal benefit from curcumin's anti-angiogenic and apoptosis-inducing properties. Discuss these approaches with your gastroenterologist to align dietary interventions with medical guidance. Those with inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's, or ulcerative colitis face chronic mucosal inflammation that elevates colorectal cancer risk. Curcumin has demonstrated NF-kappa suppression and barrier protective effects in IBD models, offering specific relevance to these patients. Finally, if you take blood-thinning medications, consult your physician before reaching therapeutic doses, as curcumin has mild antiplatelet activity at high concentrations. When implemented correctly, this isn't just wellness advice. It's a targeted, research-backed approach to reshaping your gut microbiome, suppressing harmful bacterial activity, and interrupting early cancer cell survival mechanisms. The combination of turmeric, black pepper, and fat taken consistently, engages multiple pathways that collectively reduce your risk of colorectal cancer over time. Now that you understand how to prepare curcumin for maximum absorption, let's look at the science that makes this intervention truly remarkable. The evidence comes from multiple independent studies, all pointing in the same direction. Curcumin is a dual-action compound that works both in your gut microbiome and directly on early cancer cells. One of the most compelling clinical trials took place at the University of Illinois, where researchers enrolled 44 adults with elevated colorectal cancer risk. These were people who had already undergone polyp removal, putting them statistically at higher risk for new precancerous growths. Participants received 4 grams of curcumin daily for 30 days. At the end of the trial, colon tissue biopsies were analyzed for aberrant crypt foci, the cellular formations that precede polyp development. The results were striking. There was a statistically significant reduction in these precancerous formations, directly measurable in tissue samples. This wasn't based on surveys, symptom scores, or subjective impressions. It was hard biopsy data showing real cellular change. Another critical study focused on a group with familial adenomatous polyposis, a genetic condition causing dozens to hundreds of precancerous polyps to develop in the colon over time. Participants received curcumin combined with a bioavailability enhancing compound. After 6 months, researchers observed a roughly 60% reduction in polyp count and a 50% reduction in polyp size. To put this in perspective, standard medical advice for these patients often includes prophylactic surgical removal of the colon. Achieving a 60% reduction through a dietary compound drew serious attention from the research community because it demonstrated a potent, non-invasive strategy with measurable outcomes. But the story doesn't stop at the tissue level. A microbiome-focused study published in the journal Gut Microbes examined the fecal microbial composition of 200 adults before and after 8 weeks of curcumin supplementation. Using metagenomic sequencing, the same technique applied in major human microbiome projects, researchers mapped bacterial populations down to the species level. The results were consistent. Inflammatory gram-negative bacteria decreased significantly, while populations of Bifidobacterium longum, a species linked to reduced colorectal cancer risk in population studies, increased. Essentially, curcumin shifted the balance of power in the gut from harmful, inflammation-driving bacteria to protective, immune-supporting species. Laboratory research at MD Anderson Cancer Center further illuminated curcumin's cellular action. Researchers focused on NF-kappa, a master regulatory protein that cancer cells hijack to evade immune-mediated destruction. Curcumin suppressed NF-kappa signaling by up to 80% in treated colorectal cancer cell lines. In practical terms, the cancer cells lost their ability to hide from immune detection. Combine this with curcumin's ability to inhibit VEGF, the protein tumors use to recruit new blood vessels, and you have a compound that simultaneously starves tumors of nutrients while reactivating the body's natural defense systems. This dual mechanism is extraordinary because it addresses multiple points in the cancer initiation process. First, it remodels the gut microbiome, suppressing harmful species like Fusobacterium nucleatum and Bacteroides fragilis, both implicated in colorectal cancer. These bacteria typically produce toxins that trigger chronic low-grade inflammation, a recognized precursor for tumor development. Curcumin disrupts their biofilms, weakens their cell membranes, and reduces their ability to communicate and coordinate, effectively disarming them without harming beneficial strains. At the same time, curcumin promotes the growth of protective bacteria like Lactobacillus and Bifidobacterium, reinforcing gut immunity and reducing inflammation. Second, curcumin acts directly on early cancer cells. By blocking VEGF, it prevents the formation of new blood vessels that tumors need to grow beyond microscopic size. By activating apoptosis, the programmed cell death pathway, curcumin re-engages the cellular self-destruct sequence that cancer cells typically disable. Laboratory models consistently show that curcumin induces apoptosis selectively in cancer cells while leaving healthy tissue untouched. This combination of targeted microbial modulation and cellular-level intervention is what makes curcumin uniquely potent. Despite these findings, the clinical impact depends heavily on dosage and bioavailability. That's why the specific preparation methods combining turmeric with black pepper and a fat source are non-negotiable. Without them, curcumin passes through the gut largely inactive, producing negligible biological effect. The consistency of dosing is equally critical. The gut microbiome adapts over time, so a daily, structured intake for at least 30 days is necessary to produce measurable shifts in bacterial populations and cellular environments. Sporadic or minimal intake, like a pinch in a smoothie every now and then, simply won't achieve the therapeutic effect observed in these trials. It's also important to highlight that curcumin's effects extend beyond general wellness. They're directly relevant for high-risk populations. People with a history of frequent antibiotic use, for example, often have a disrupted microbiome with protective bacterial diversity reduced. Curcumin's prebiotic effect supports regrowth of these beneficial species, helping to re-establish a resilient microbial ecosystem. Those with inflammatory bowel conditions, including Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, are at chronically elevated risk for colorectal cancer. Curcumin's barrier protective effects and anti-inflammatory mechanisms specifically target the pathways involved in IBD, making it a potentially impactful adjunct to standard care. Even individuals with a family history of colorectal cancer or previous polyps benefit. By acting at the microbial level and inducing apoptosis in precancerous cells, curcumin interrupts multiple stages of cancer initiation. For these patients, integrating curcumin into daily routines can be a meaningful addition to risk management strategies in consultation with healthcare providers. Finally, curcumin is generally safe, though high doses can mildly thin the blood. People on anticoagulant therapy should consult a physician before taking therapeutic doses. For the vast majority of adults, however, curcumin's long history in culinary and medicinal use, combined with these research-backed effects, makes it a low-risk, high-value intervention for gut health and cancer prevention. At this point, the evidence is clear. Curcumin is not a trendy supplement. It's a highly studied, biologically active compound with the potential to remodel the gut microbiome, suppress inflammatory pathogens, and directly inhibit tumor development. When combined correctly with black pepper and fat, and consumed consistently, it becomes a practical, everyday tool for colorectal cancer prevention.